Happy Thursday, or Friday Eve as we like to say. Hey Druid, thank you so much. Marianne, hi. Double T came to visit today. Oh, you have something in your feet? Paws? I don't know. What do you call a turtle's hands? So you have to go sit down while I show our friends what we have. Okay. Um, so this summer has not been, or in spring, has not been one of collecting quilts so much. I have purchased one quilt this year, and it was outside of my budget, but I managed it. Um, but, you know, I'm a collector. I always have to be like, you know, collecting things. And I haven't gone a whole lot of places this year yet. It's just been kind of, you know, it's just been kind of one of those years. But I have been collecting something that I was driven to finish the collection, and I did it. And you guys know I collect the little mini verse and mini brands doodads that you can find at like Walmart and Target and the craft stores, and they're those blind packages. Well, they do Hello Kitty series, and Hello Kitty is like my childhood. I love Hello Kitty so much when I was a kid. She is the same age as me. And in case you didn't know, she is not a cat. She is a little girl who lives in London who is 5 apples tall. Even though she looks like a cat, she is not. Anyway, so, you know, Hello Kitty is kind of like popped up over the years of different things. Lots of companies will partner with Sanrio. And, oh my gosh, Marianne, you got some Miniverse babies. I have so many babies. I've been trying to dress them, and it's difficult because they're so tiny. We'll have to talk offline about that. Anyway, so the latest collection, it's Series 4 of Hello Kitty and Friends. I think I have most of Series 3, but Series 4, I doubled down and I collected the whole thing because it's also very cute. So let me show you, just because I can't resist. So when I was little, there was like a little boutique. It was called Mon Petit Chou, or Mon Petit Chou, and which loosely translates to my little cream puff. And of course, I mean, with a name like that, and it was the 1980s, you can imagine, I mean, like early 80s, like 80, 81, you can imagine it was owned by some snooty ladies. But, and I don't think, it was not a Hallmark store, I don't think they had like Hallmark products. I think it was just like boutique, like just cute things. They had the Sanrio stuff, and that stuff was coming directly from Japan. I don't know the history of distribution in the US. It was not a household name, but enough kids that I knew had the stuff. And so every now and then, my mom would let me, you know, buy something. She would either scrounge up some money, or I would have maybe a little bit of money from, you know, chores or Christmas, my birthday, whatever. And these things were probably just a few bucks. They weren't expensive, but I did not have the volume that my friends did. So as, you know, such a child who just didn't have everything I desperately needed, I have had to get these. Well, these ones that I'm talking about from the 80s were all sort of stationary items and school supplies. So like erasers and pencils and little tiny stationery and little cards and things, and stickers, and, you know, I would send stuff to my my pen pal, and, you know, just cuteness. So I think there are 8 different surprises for this this series. So there's a little Hello Kitty notebook, and you can see it's got cute Hello Kitty paper in it. It's got little dividers, like the little bow dividers. So, so cute. So cute. And then my heart just like the Grinch heart. It just grows every time I look at this stuff. Oh, and it's coming apart. This is one of the things you have to assemble it yourself. The little stickers. Oh my God, look at those tiny stickers. So this is one thing out of there. There's more in this one. A tiny pencil box. I mean, look at this little thing. This teeny pencil box. Now the pencils, the Hello Kitty pencils, were series 3. Where you got to make the erasers that go on top of the pencils. I have those too, and I just have not put them in the pencil box yet. Also in this one, and I haven't opened it, but it's a Hello Kitty calculator. It doesn't work, but I assume that the head might flip up or something. I haven't tried yet. I don't want to open it. I don't want to spoil it. It's so cute. And then the pièce de résistance. Look at this, you guys. It's a ruler. It's a Hello Kitty ruler. I mean, can you even? So sweet and adorable. And I just can't. If you like these things, they are available, as from what I've heard, they're available, I think, at Target. And or they're also online, but oh, she was a She-Ra fan. Yeah. So Masters of the Universe, I was just a tiny bit too old for that when that came on. Although I have mad respect for She-Ra. And a little bit of like love-hate for Skeletor. I did involve He-Man in my last Hello Kitty Sunbonnet Sue. My Sunbonnet Sue lecture, which Hello Kitty was also a part of. So, yeah. Okay. The Hello Kitty school supplies, of course, are adorable. But the next thing I'm going to show you, I lost my mind over it. I was like, if I don't get any of the other stuff, I have to find this one. It is what's called a gachapon, which in Japan, I'm assuming that, I think that these are like also probably popular like in Korea and maybe China too. But basically what it is, it's a gumball machine. It's the gumball machine with the little capsules. But this one, you guys, this one actually works. But let me show you. You don't just like turn the little thing. Oh no. You have a teeny tiny change purse. And I shit you not, this thing, it's made out of like a rubbery material, so it's got the little like the little kiss clasp at the top that actually works. So I'm trying not to drop it. And inside there are 4 little plastic coins. Can you believe this? Okay, so you got your little plastic coin out of your little change purse, and my big fat fingers barely work on this. And you put it in there, so it fits in the little slot, and then you turn the thing, and I'm not going to try to do that backwards because it'll fall and I will lose it under my desk. And you have to, come on, come out. Of course now they're jammed from being, of course now it's not going to work. I can't get the thing to, there we go. So the little ball comes out. And the little ball's open. I mean, look at this little, ridiculously tiny. I mean, it is the size of like a large pea. And inside are teeny tiny little building bits. I don't know if you can even see this. It's a cherry. It has a little stem. And then this is the top of either an ice cream or a cupcake. There's 2 different ones that come out of this. So, and I don't even know if I can get it up close enough, you guys, for you to see what these things build. I mean, this is like so absurd. So this is what it builds. And I know that my camera just cannot, like, I mean, even that doesn't work. My camera cannot focus on this, but the little tiny plastic ice cream scoop that goes on this, in this little dish or on top of this little cupcake, literally has the little dog's face. I mean, like, I can't even. And so the little dog is Pochaco. He's one of Hello Kitty's friends. I'm like gobsmacked by this stuff. And it too can be yours for like $10. So, yeah. So for much less than the price of a beautiful quilt, Stephanie has been collecting tiny plastic children's toys. Actually, this stuff is, children do collect it. You know, I belong to a bunch of the collectors groups on Facebook, and there are children that do like this stuff, especially the little babies. They make little silicone babies. There's 2 different companies that do those. And I have a few of them just for fun. I like to make little scenes of them like drinking beer and stuff. All the other people with the babies are a little bit more serious about them. I think it's funny to make the babies do non-baby things. Anyway, so these little things bring me so much joy, and that's one of the discussions online I think I've seen, and I think I mentioned it here a couple weeks ago. It's just, when the news does not bring you much joy, like there is not a human interest story to be found on the news, I'm kind of like, how do we get some joy in our lives? Well, we look at kitten and puppy videos, right, online, and a lot of people collect little trinkets and little tiny things because they're so joyful. And I think, for people that like myself, I'm kind of really into this. This is totally a hobby. It has nothing to do with like what my vocation in life is, but this idea of creating these little worlds, like I have control of my little worlds, and when my outer world is like in chaos, I can have this safe little world where you can, go get something out of a little gumball machine and just have joy. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So the adult miniatures community is alive and well. So yeah, I just had to share that with you guys. I've been collecting them over the past, this batch over like the past, I don't know, 3 months, maybe. Anyway. All right, moving right along. Let's see what else I want. Oh, before I forget, I wanted to, and I am blanking. I know I talked about it on Quilt Nerding the other night, and because I know a few people joined and followed. But I am part of a group called United We Stitch. It is a nationwide community art project that is aimed at defining what we the people want the future of democracy to look like. It is nonpartisan. Granted, most of the women in kind of the founding group, I would say, are anywhere from sort of middle left to pretty left, but I was very adamant. I'm like, I don't want to be a part of this if this is going to be like, oh, you must be a progressive, you must be a Democrat, you must be liberal. I know that there will be political statements and political concerns kind of coming up in this, this idea of what the future of democracy looks like, but it really and truly should not be politicized, because I think things like what our country stands for, Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, if you don't get behind what those 2 documents say, then I think you need to examine your patriotism. And I realize that's kind of a statement to make. But, I think that we can be patriotic and we can care about the foundings of our country and what those words mean, without overly politicizing it. I don't think that we have to go into all of the yuck that comes along with the founding of our country. Acknowledge it, and certainly I think that the history of all of that needs to stay in our educational spheres. More children need to learn about like the true, beginnings of the United States and really what that looked like politically and socially. And I'm digressing a little bit here, but I think that just the basics of, we the people, a country that is governed by us, for us, it's a unique thing, and it doesn't exist anywhere else in the world exactly how we do it. So that said, I'm really dedicated to this thing, and we're out there on social media. I've been doing probably a very bad job of the social media. It is my job, but I would like to ask you guys, if you're interested, to check it out. We do have a website, so first of all, I'm going to give you the Instagram because I have that pulled up. So that is the Instagram. We also have a Substack. Let me go to the website. The website is very easy. We had to put 250 on the end of some of our social media stuff because, alas, United We Stitch was already taken. But we did get the website. So anyway, if it's something that you feel interested in, check it out. I can answer any questions that you might have. But if you could give it a follow, if you feel called to do that, share it with other people. I mean, I understand it's not for everybody. The ask is that people either coordinate something in their communities or make these panels. And the panels are large. I think I've shown mine. I apologize if I haven't, but it's out there on the Instagram. Anyway, it's something that I feel strongly about, and it's one of those things where, I mean, you guys know, I don't like to get overly political. It's a mucky, mired up place. And I think that there's so many things in our world that are overly politicized into this divergency. And I think it is my belief that 90% of us wake up in the morning just wanting to have a good day and for good things to happen to us, for good things to happen to our family and our friends. And really that's what it boils down to. Agendas and all of that stuff I'm just not into. So, please understand that my affiliation with United We Stitch is not, it's not about politics. It's just really about what it means to be an American and how do we lean into that? So, just a heads up about that. I'll probably keep pestering you guys about it just because I'm trying to increase followers and stuff. So, what are we going to look at today? So I literally since Monday, I've been like, oh, what am I going to look at on Tuesday or on Thursday? We have the appendix in Avril Colby's book, which I don't know if I want to read the whole thing because it gets into some technical stuff, but I do think it's interesting to look at. So I want to do that. But I kept looking at all my books and I'm like, oh, nothing is I'm kind of feeling like that summer slump, doldrums kind of. I'm just not interested in looking at anything or reading anything and just bleh. So I thought to myself, I got to bring something to my friends. So I, when in doubt, grab a Quilter's Newsletter magazine. And sometimes serendipity guides me. So first of all, I found this interesting and funny, and I've only read little tiny bits of it just to kind of see what it's about. Not read it in any detail. It's called A Piece of Red Calico, and it is from a publication in 1893. And when we get to it, I'll give you more info about it. But it was in the June 1988 issue of Quilter's Newsletter magazine. So we'll look at that, and we're gonna look at Mary Strickler's quilt, which you guys have probably heard me and or Jill mention before. Oh, come on now, magazine. So in this issue, this is May 1988. There is an article by Bonnie Lehman, so, from the publisher herself, about the auctioning of 39 quilts from Mary Strickler's quilt collection. And I was like, ooh, maybe this will give me some info on some questions I've had. Because for a long time, I would, Jill and I would look at magazines and we would see advertisements in the early Quilter's Newsletter magazines and other places mentioning some of these quilt galleries and, just shops. And American Hurrah was one, Laura Fisher was another one, and then Mary Strickler's quilt. And I mentioned Mary Strickler's quilt one day because I was like, I don't know who this one is and, what happened to this one. Who was it? Well, it's my friend Julie Silber. And Julie Silber, I hope she counts me as a friend. I count her as a friend. But I know her through American Quilt Study Group, and she is actually part of United We Stitch. So I see her almost every Wednesday when we meet. And, I've never asked questions of her because it's just never there's never the right time. We're in meetings about stuff or we're at events where there's other people, and it's just never a good time to just say, Julie, tell me the story of not to say that she wouldn't want to tell me or that she doesn't like to talk about it. I'm sure she wouldn't mind, but it's just there's never been a right time. And so the next best thing is the fact that it got published somewhere. So this is not the whole story of Mary Strickler's, but it gives us a little bit of information. So I wanted to look at this and some of the 4 quilts that they featured out of the 39, and they provide the stories. So this was really interesting. And then there's a little snippet about Julie and her business partner, Linda Ruther. Now, Linda is no longer with us. Linda passed away, I think it was 2014. Let me see. I want to make sure I get this right. So 2013. So Linda died September 20th, 2013. And her obituary mentions that she passed away at the Zen Hospice of San Francisco. So my guess is she had cancer. And Julie is mentioned in her obituary as her childhood friend, which I'm having trouble piecing that one together because I guess I just don't know enough about Julie's childhood. I kind of thought Julie was always from California, but perhaps she's not, because Linda grew up in Detroit. So it could be that Julie was also originally from Detroit. That I will have to ask her. In any event, Linda and Julie came together, and I think what is another piece of it. So let me see. So Michelle Tellier is listed as Linda's life companion. So, in the days before we had gay marriage, I would say that this was probably Linda's wife for, better or worse. And I don't know anything about Michelle. I had actually not heard her name until I read the obituary, but knowing what I know about Julie and then what I've read about Linda, Linda was very involved in LGBTQ concerns. She marched, she advocated. I know Julie is a big advocate. So, this is kind of a story of women that, they represent a lot of things I care about. So it's very interesting. So without further ado, let's read this. And I have pictures. So let me scoot over here. So first, this is the issue of Quilter's Newsletter magazine that this story comes from. Again, it's May 1988. And look at this Baltimore album quilt on the front. Yowza. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And you know what? One thing I didn't look to see. Okay, let me read you the little snippet about this quilt, because this is a famous quilt. And it is from Mary Strickler's quilt collection. So on the cover, Baltimore album quilt, 108 by 108 inches, probably made by Mary Evans of Baltimore, Maryland, for John and Rebecca Chamberlain, dated 1848. So we're right there in the heyday of Baltimore album quilts. And it says in parentheses, Mary Evans was a well-known professional quilt maker of the time who earned her living creating quilts and quilt blocks. And this has been established about Mary Evans. It is from the Mary Strickler's quilt collection, owned by Julie Silber and Linda Ruther, and it was recently sold at Sotheby's in New York for the second highest price ever paid for a quilt, $100,000. That has been surpassed by now, but not by much. I can't remember. I am totally blanking on what quilt more recently made that much, more than that. There definitely are some, but $100,000 is a lot for a quilt. So this says that the highest known price, and again, this is 1988, is $176,000 brought by a Baltimore album quilt at Sotheby's in 1987. I don't know what quilt that is, but I have some ideas. I have some general ideas. There's really not that many like legit high style Baltimore album quilts out there. The ones that are out there generally are either in institutions, particularly some here in Baltimore, but some other institutions nationwide, or in private collections. But there's really not that many, I don't think, in private collections anymore. I think they have a lot that have been revealed have gone to institutions. So going along, Dina Katzenberg of the Baltimore Museum of Art, in her highly regarded exhibition catalog, Baltimore Album Quilts, says that there are just 50 known Baltimore album quilts. I think there probably are more that have been uncovered since then, again, since 1988, but still not that many. This quilt is one of only 12 that are apparently the sole work of Mary Evans. According to Katzenberg, some of the hallmarks of Mary Evans's work, most of which was made in the 1840s and 50s, are the triple bow knots, prominent white roses, figures with inked features, the use of rainbow fabric to indicate contours, and a sure sense of design and compositional skill. Ruther and Silber report that this album has many of those and other distinctive design elements credited by Katzenberg to Mary Evans. The placement of dotted fragments for the bird's eye, intricately interlaced baskets with flared brims, and delicately inked hairs on the rosebuds, to name a few. The fabrics that Mary Evans used in Baltimore album quilts were examples of fabrics being imported into the port city of Baltimore from England and France. The rainbow fabrics were the product of an innovative printing process developed in the French textile. This goes on. They rarely have this long of a blurb about, the French textile industry in 1843. The three-color block printing machine invented to print these brilliant fabrics gave them a richness and color that enabled Evans to paint with them and achieve her distinctive appliques. And if you guys remember, the rainbow fabrics were actually the ones where they painted the printing roller. They wiped and painted it so that they got this ombre effect. And sometimes it would be with multiple colors. So I think that's where the rainbow idea came from. But you see a lot of blue, you'll see this beautiful blue transition a lot in this period. Ruther and Silber also say that while many of the design motifs are recognizable from her other quilts, Evans has in this quilt included some symbols not found anywhere else. A tiny blue watering can and a harp. They theorize that they might be personal symbols reflecting the particular lives and concerns of John and Rebecca Chamberlain, for whom the quilt was made. Because centrally placed in the quilt, there is a dove holding their names perched atop the Bible dated 1848. It is likely that the Chamberlains commissioned Mary Evans to make this quilt for their wedding. Silber and Ruther state that this quilt is a sign of the wealth and status of the Chamberlains in their community during the growing industrialization of Baltimore in the mid-1800s. This quilt, one of the few pieces of Evans's work that remains today, is valued not only for its rarity and extraordinary beauty, but also for its historical significance. And this cover photo is courtesy of Sotheby's. So that's that quilt. And I don't know if this is one of the ones that made its way back to Baltimore. I'm not sure. I feel like I've seen this one, but this is terrible. As much as I love Baltimore album quilts, you guys know I've done that falling down the eagle hole because I love the eagles. The ones that don't have eagles, I kind of struggle with. I'm like, it's got cornucopias. Lots of them have cornucopias. So yeah, this one I'd have to go back and literally look at my own photos from museum exhibits to know if I've ever seen this one. It is still absolutely amazing. Yeah, I mean, look at some of these. These are those rainbow fabrics, getting that ombre effect. Okay, let's move on to Mary Strickler's quilt. So this is the first quilt that they're showing in the article. And we will learn about these quilts in a moment, but I'll just leave this one up while we read. So the article is called Going, Gone, But Not Forgotten. 39 memorable quilts from the Mary Strickler's quilt collection bring $260,535 on the auction block. This is by Bonnie Lehman, as I said. At Sotheby's Auction Galleries in New York City on January 30th at 10 a.m., there was an outwardly calm and business as usual atmosphere as about 200 people gradually filled the room where the quilts were soon to be auctioned. But underneath the hum of small talk and exchanged greetings, as collectors, investors, antique dealers, speculators, journalists, and lovers of quilt and folk art filed in and found their preferred seats, there was a charged undercurrent of excitement and anticipation, of tension and even a little sadness. Emotions were high because it was the first time ever a major collection of antique quilts had been offered for sale as a group. And most of the people attending were there because they cared, for one reason or another, about how well these quilts would fare on the auction block. Some were there because they wanted to see the quilts bring handsome prices. A few wanted a specific quilt and hoped to be able to outbid everyone for it. Others were there simply to see this very special group of quilts together one last time. The electricity of suspense was in the air. Sotheby's has been in business as an auction house since 1774. Did you guys know that? I mean, I knew Sotheby's had been around for a hot minute, but 1774! I mean, they're technically a year older than our country. Or 2 years, I guess, actually. Why am I thinking 1775? 1776. So they are 2 years older than our country. So the company has a lot of practice in running a sale professionally and efficiently. Showing that professionalism, the auctioneer announced the first quilt. Lot number 1450, exactly at 10:15, the scheduled time of the sale. A slide of the quilt was projected on a screen high on one side of the stage. Now, today, I guess they were only showing the picture. The quilts had to have been there, I'm thinking. Because I would assume that the winners got to take them. But I guess for whatever reason, they're showing them. And we just have this one little picture, which is not a great picture, so I didn't include it in my images. But isn't it funny that they had one of those slide carousels with the it's so funny. Today it would be, a PowerPoint or whatever. It took just 30 seconds for the unusual pieced, appliqued, and crewel embroidered American quilt circa 1850 to sell for $1,500. Its value had been established at $2,500 to $3,500, so the auction was off to a disappointing start, except for the winning bidder, who was surely delighted with his purchase. So the first winner was a he. Immediately, the next slide clicked into place, and a navy and white pieced pine tree with hovering hawks, circa 1880, appeared on the screen. Now it was called number 1451 by the auctioneer, who calmly encouraged the bidding to go up to $2,200 before he said, "Done, paddle number 145. Pine tree's trial by buyer lasted 40 seconds, and then it was done. The bidders, who were referred to by the numbers on the paddles they flashed discreetly when they wanted to bid, were also efficient." Let's pause here for a second because Druid has some Sotheby's details. So, founded in London in 1744 or 1774? I'm guessing it was actually 1744. By entrepreneur Samuel Baker, Sotheby's is the world's oldest and largest fine art and luxury auction house. Originally specializing in the sale of rare library collections, the company expanded into fine art, jewelry, and real estate. I did notice some Sotheby's houses when I was out on Block Island. I'm like, ooh, richy rich. Eventually growing into a massive global enterprise. The book era, 1744 to 1917. So yeah, I'm guessing then that maybe Bonnie had a mistake here when she says 1774 and not 1744. So Samuel Baker's first auction sold a collection of valuable books from Sir John Stanley's library. By 1767, the firm became Baker and Lee, Following Baker's death in 1778, his nephew, John Sotheby, took the helm, and the family led the company for over 80 years. During this era, it auctioned famous collections, including the Librarian of Napoleon Bonaparte. Shift to fine art. In 1917 to 1950s, the firm moved to its iconic London headquarters on New Bond Street in 1917. Following the First World War, sales of paintings, drawings, and decorative arts began to outpace books. The global expansion era and modern era, 1955 to present, under the leadership of Peter C. Wilson, Sotheby's became the first international auction house by opening operations in New York City in 1955. In 1964, it acquired Park Burnett Galleries, further cementing its U.S. presence. The company expanded to other major hubs like Hong Kong, Paris, and China. Diversification and going private. In 1976, so here we do have a 76, Sotheby's International Realty was founded to cater to high net worth individuals. I am not one of those. The company has floated on the stock market multiple times, but ultimately went private in 2019 following a takeover by European billionaire Patc. Yeah, okay. And so Druid is saying multiple sources state 1744. So I'm glad she looked this up, because I'm guessing Bonnie must have made a typo, because it literally does say 1774 here in the magazine. So I'm glad we got that fixed. Okay, so moving on. So we've got two things have sold here. And so the auction proceeded. The rest of the quilts, number 1452 through number 1484, each had its quick moment of truth. The bidders in the audience referred to the quilt's written descriptions and color pictures in the heavy catalogs resting in their laps as they decided whether to raise or hide their paddles. Callers, some from Europe and Japan, were also actively bidding, helped by Sotheby staff on telephones. And you guys have probably seen, if you've ever seen a Sotheby's auction happening, you'll see those people like over in like at the back corner, and they're on phones with people from all over the world bidding on stuff. The prices swung from a low of $1,100 to around $3,000 to $4,000 for most of the quilts. And in 1988, in some cases, those were lower prices. I don't know if you guys remember. It was probably way back. It's probably been almost 3 years ago when I first started streaming. I found my mom had this set of cards. They were like kind of postcard sized. I still have them on my bookshelf. And it was kind of a catalog. And some of the prices on this one particular, on specific quilts in this one particular collection that were supposedly made by one woman, oh my gosh, they went from like thousands to tens of thousands. And it was this same period. So I think some of these prices are surprisingly low considering. I don't want to say you don't find these prices anymore, because that's not true. You do. But a quilt that would garner those really, really high prices would have to be like an absolute perfect condition. And all the better if it has provenance and all that stuff. The prices, let's see. Among the quilts bringing the highest prices were a masterpiece Mariner's Compass dated 1847, and it made $6,500. That's probably a standard price today if it was like a really stunning, good condition. Yeah, I could see that price today. A unique Eagles and Rainbows quilt circa 1850 for $7,000. I would love to have seen that. A Joseph's Coat Mennonite bars circa 1900 for $5,250. And an elegant Geese in Flight circa 1840 for $5,250. And that's $5,250, by the way. One of the well-known pieces in this collection was an unusual pieced silk, velvet, and taffeta horse crazy quilt featuring realistic applique and embroidered black and palomino horses all around its wide red velvet border. It brought $13,000. The most sought-after quilt, however, was a Baltimore album quilt shown on this month's cover. So let's go back to it as they're going to talk about it. Zoom in a little bit. So it was shown on this month's Quilters Newsletter magazine cover. It sold for a record-breaking $100,000 to a private collector. Now, why private collector? If you could buy a quilt for $100,000 in 1988, why didn't you adopt me? I was still a child. I was still adoptable. My mother would have fought you, but I would have prevailed. I'm very curious. I would love to have known who that private collector was. And I'm sure it's not a secret among the people that know Baltimore album quilts. I'm certain I know a handful of people that would absolutely know where and how these quilts made their way. The entire auction was finished in 30 minutes. The quilts averaging just a little over a minute each on the screen in their final appearance together. In that short time, a total of $260,535 was committed by their new owners to acquire them. Now, some of them are being enjoyed in private in their new homes. Others will likely have an interesting future moving from owner to owner. Wherever their new travels take them, they will not be forgotten. Here are pictures of 4 of them with their stories to date, told with help from Linda and Julie. So, jump back to this one. So this one is called Sarah McElwain's Quilt. And as you can see, I will point out that Sarah McElwain's signed her quilt in fabric. I love that. You know what? We always urge people, sign your quilts. If nothing else, put your name and date on the back of it. It's just like, not a piece of paper, not something pinned to it, but literally like just a little piece of fabric, Sharpie, stitch it on. That's all you have to do. Now, to put more information on there is even better, but just the bare minimum. Put your name on your quilts. If you have quilts that you didn't make, but somebody else did, put the information about that person on there. And if it's your grandmother or an aunt or a friend or whoever, you could document your relationship to that person, when and why you acquired the quilt, etc. But really, all that you have to do, all that I beseech you to do, is name and date. Please, 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 please. Okay, so Sarah McElwain's quilt, 94 by 94 inches. So it's kind of a average size. It was made by Sarah between 1850 and 1870, probably in the eastern United States. It is possible Sarah made the quilt to celebrate her wedding, for the quilt is covered with traditional marriage symbols. A heart in hand, a heart block in each corner, small hearts, and most significantly, a man and woman holding hands at the top of the quilt, which I just noticed that. Aren't they cute? Aren't they cute? I love it. Where I lost my spot. Sarah used several traditional album quilt patterns in her quilt, but she executed them with a more joyful expression than found in many more elegant and formal album quilts of the period. The exuberance and vitality in her quilt reflected a folk sense of design not often found in stylized quilts using patterns. On one of the blocks, there is a shawl with 13 stars and a fringe. I think that's this, yeah, with the heart in hand. Partially bound by a brown wool challis that may have been an important fabric to Sarah because it is added only to this block, completely different from any other fabric in the quilt. Sarah boldly and proudly appliqued her name on the bottom border, ensuring that her memory would live after her. Sarah's quilt commanded $4,000. So Druid said, your mother's friend who made the quilt for you. I remember that. We saw that recently. It's the one that has your name on it, right? She's so impressive with her willingness to learn technology. She ordered a book to learn how to use the features on her machine to make tags for her quilts. She used her cousin's machine to make the label for my quilt. Oh, I love that. What a cool lady. Oh, I love that. Yeah, and that's another thing you can do if you have a sewing machine that does an alphabet, you can kind of program it to like put a name and date in there and it stitches it. I've always found that just using fabric markers on a piece of fabric is so much faster, and then you just applique it on. Because I'm a little lazy. Okay, so let's scroll out. Oh my goodness, look, and this is really a very pretty quilt. So some of the things she pointed out. So you've got these heart corner blocks, and then you have these heart wreaths. Lots of little hearts here and there. There's one. I just saw another one. Where did it go? Yeah, maybe that was the one I was looking at. Of course, the people, the man and the woman, so cute. With a machine like that, there's no excuse, right? If you're gonna be machine sewing your quilt, when you're done, you should just grab a piece of fabric and put it through there with the name and the date. Oh, there you go. There's another heart. Oh, and a little person. Look at that tiny little person. And there's another heart. Oh, what a fun quilt. And there's a hand. Oh, I love this quilt. Okay. This quilt. This is a very special quilt. So first of all, it's right in the center fold of the magazine, and trying to keep the glare off of it, it looks weird, but I actually have a postcard of this quilt. I don't think there's a date on this, but at some point, Mary Strickler's quilt issued postcards, and this quilt was on one of them. And I keep meaning to ask Julie to sign this, but I never have it with me when I see her. So one day soon, I hope. Okay, so what she says about this: the pieced and appliqued chicken quilt, 74 by 84 inches, circa 1870, from New England, was made by a skilled needlewoman with a sense of humor. The quilt maker must have had a fondness for the fowl she chose to celebrate in her whimsical quilt. She selected wonderful fabrics to portray her chicken. Each bird is placed on the quilt. I'm sorry, to portray her chickens. Each bird is placed on the quilt in a slightly different position. She knew that chickens are independent and individual birds. Let's just zoom in a little bit. Yeah. It's the same it's the same template. She's just kind of haphazardly put them down. But that's okay. That's obviously what's her intent. The appliqued red and blue leaf details in the alternate blocks add movement and spirit to the overall design. The quilt maker's creativity and humor in portraying what was likely an important part of her daily life are delightfully evident in this charming piece of American folk art. This quilt was featured on a postcard series by Mary Strickler's Quilt in 1979. So that's when this postcard was from, 1979. And it was exhibited at the Oakland Museum in 1981 in the show American Quilts, A Handmade Legacy. It was purchased for $3,000 in 1988 at Sotheby's. And actually, it's funny. This one, it's got some blocks that were not in good condition. You've got like very serious deterioration in this one red block. But I would say some of these other ones are good, and it's probably the difference between a turkey red and something that was just not a stable fabric that for whatever reason, it didn't fare well. But the turkey reds are usually pretty stable. And these black chickens, I'm trying to see. I think that's yeah, that looks like a printed fabric. I wasn't sure if there was some damage, but I think this is like a sort of those neon fabrics that have that. It looks like lightning, but I don't see a color in there, so maybe it's not really a neon fabric, but yeah. I like this quilt. I just think it's so fun. It could be anything. Like, you could replace the chickens with anything, and it would just be a lovely quilt. But with those chickens, you want to hang out with this lady. Hang out with this lady and her chickens. Okay, so here's the next one, the Lone Star quilt. Beautiful. I think this one was probably part of their postcard series too. Cats, yes! Yes, I always keep my eye out for cute cat quilts. I actually have a book that somebody gave me that's cat, like different cat quilts. And some of them are kind of goofy and silly, and some of them are really stunning. And I, you know, it's in my lineup. Probably never have time to make one, but okay. The Lone Star quilt, 84 by 84 inches. It was made in America about 1880. This particular quilt reveals much about its maker. The central star is cut and pieced with a careful accuracy not always found in pieced designs of this period. Gosh, those colors are so pretty. After successfully piecing the star with precision, this quilt maker was ready for other challenges. She chose to embellish the open areas in the background with appliqué stars. No mean feat. These stars are all appliqué. Yowza! That's a lot of points and like star cleavage. That inside point is not quite as difficult as the outside point, because the outside point you've got bulk. The inside point you've got to carefully stitch so that you don't have any exposed seam, because you got to like really clip down in there and, you know. Undaunted, she added even more appliqué stars on an elaborate scalloped border. See the whole border. Very pretty. This same perfectionistic quilt maker, who obviously liked symmetry, so careful she was to place her appliques in careful alignment, seemed able to loosen up a bit when she planned her scallops. She was content to accept their somewhat asymmetrical contours at the corners. So yeah, what is the situation here? Yeah, it's kind of lumpy here. And that one's like a tab. And then these have like the indents are right at the corner. It is kind of funny. I mean, you get to this point, like you're so exacting, you're so careful. And then you get to the point where you're like ready to bind it. And you're like, I never want to see this quilt again. I don't care what the binding looks like. I wonder if it was a situation like that. Then, unable to leave her growing masterpiece alone, or perhaps because she saw that it would be the final perfect touch to her design, she added a playful bud and vine appliqué frame inside the border. The result is a triumph of the quilt maker's design sense, sewing skills, and humor. The quilt was in the exhibits, Flowering of American Folk Art at the M.H. DeYoung Museum in San Francisco in 1975, and in Quilts in Women's Lives, San Francisco Art Institute, 1976. The 1988 auction bid for it was $2,500. Such a lovely thing. The pink and the dark blue together, I love that. And then I guess this is probably black. Yeah, I think that is black. So, gorgeous. A little crazy. Okay. So this one's interesting, you guys. I was like, what? When I saw it. The Buell quilt. And that's Buell. Do you guys remember that name? You might not. It took me a second because I was like, why do I know that name? Oh, that's why I know that name. Well, let me read and you will immediately remember. So the Buell quilt, what we see here, a pieced, embroidered, and painted silk, velvet, and taffeta album/crazy quilt, 70 by 70 inches, was made about 1880 to 1890. Linda and Julie write, it remains a mystery exactly what connection this quilt has with Sarah Josepha Buell. Hail. The editor or editrix of Godey's Lady's Book, 1836 to 1876. A like name, S.J. Buell, is embroidered on the flag of the ship on the quilt, and the quilt itself is the epitome of the excess which Godey's was extolling in decorative needlework towards the end of the century. Victorian women made quilts not as functional bed coverings, but as decorative and ornamental showpieces. In this quilt, the needlework is magnificent in every detail. This quilt is considered by some the quintessential Victorian quilt. It shines with elegance and vitality and gives us a glimpse into one aspect of turn of the century life. It has been published in Quilts in America, McGraw-Hill, 1975. Quilt Engagement Calendar, which we know that's Carter Halk started those. It was in 74. I think 74 might have been the first year. Is that the first year they did the Quilt Engagement Calendar? I can't remember. Hearts and Hands, Quilt Digest Press, 1987. That had a film attached to it, and Julie was, I don't know how much Linda had to do with it, but Julie was highly involved in Hearts and Hands. And it was featured in American Quilts, A Handmade Legacy, 1981. In 1988, it commanded $24,000. So a lot more than the other three. In fact, do the math. The other three, let's see. Oh, yeah. So the Buell quilt brought in like almost 3 times as much as the other 3 quilts put together. So, but it is so very interesting. And it looks like this is where S.J. Buell, could it be Sarah Josepha? You know, is this somebody that was maybe related to her? So she ended her editorship in, what year was it? 1876. And I think she died a few years after that, if I remember correctly. But yeah, 1880-ish is when this was made, maybe to 1890. It could have been like somebody in the family that wanted to say something about her. I don't know. It could just be a coincidence. This is cool. I'm very curious about this. I mean, really, this whole block. Like I would love to see, like, are all of these like separate pieces? I guess. Like, is this a ribbon? Or is this embroidery? Like, I want to see this thing in detail. And really, this is like more of a simple quilt, honestly. I mean, I realize it's got a lot. It's got lots of embroidery, lots of velvety confection. But some of these crazy quilts, I've seen some that are just, extra worldly, that have, 2-3 times as much confection in them as this. But it's got, it's got the hallmarks. You got a shoe, we've got fans, there's a horse, grapes, lots of velvet, lots of embroidery. Looks like some of the little embroidery patterns of the day. This could have been a Cat Greenaway, maybe. Umbrella, parasol, horseshoe, yeah. Beach life. Yeah. Some of the stuff here, yeah. The compote. So, okay. So next, we're not done. Next, we want to talk about the collectors of Mary Strickler's quilts. So, let me go back to Linda's obituary. And I'll just read a little bit of it because some of it, she sounds just so fascinating. So she grew up in Detroit, and she attended high school at Putney School in Vermont, and then went back to Michigan and got a degree in education from the University of Michigan. She moved to San Francisco in 1965, where she worked as a Head Start teacher, and she also waitressed at the Spaghetti Factory. I love that. I've never been to the Spaghetti Factory, but I know where it is. I've been past it. Her parents, this is terrible, but like, wow. Her parents died in a plane crash in 1970. So at that point, she left teaching and decided to follow her talent for recognizing and creating beauty. A very special passion was for antique quilts. They represent the fabric of our lives, she often said of her beloved quilts. Linda collected and assembled quilts as early as 1965. Along with her childhood friend, Julie Silber, she opened a quilt store in Marin County, curated museum shows, and simply immersed herself in the world of quilts. Linda lived in San Anselmo for 25 years. It goes on to talk more, about just sort of general things about her. She loved dogs and etc. But it goes on to say she studied with anthropologist Angeles Arian. I don't know if I'm saying that person's name right, whose work inspired the next part of her life. In 1997, at the age of 55, she moved to Albion to create a retreat center. Linda called it Heart and Hands. She always had that her vision for healing and inspiration came directly from her grandmother, Anna. Now, it's interesting. She's running a retreat center, and she's calling it Heart and Hands. And meanwhile, her friend Julie, and former business partner, is, I think around this time had worked on the film, Heart and Hands. So it's kind of interesting. Now, as Julie is alive and well, and she still has her gallery, her shop in Berkeley, I believe. It's in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I think it's by appointment only, but she's there a lot. I feel like every time I talk to her, she's there. I see her, she's there. And if you follow her on Instagram, you get to see inside of her shop a lot. And she does unboxings of quilts and stuff. It's pretty fun. And I would say Julie is probably best known today. I mean, obviously Mary Strickler's was a big thing, but she went on to curate the Esprit collection. And so she was responsible for that. And I suspect, we're going to read, but I have a suspicion that possibly the reason why Mary Strickler's quilt, they closed it, might be because Julie was working for the Thompsons on the Esprit collection. I could be wrong. The dates might not jive, but I kind of feel like maybe that was the change, a change in their jobs and the things they were working on. So here is the second part of the story. And so this is Linda, and here's Julie. They're showing off that quilt, the Baltimore quilt in this book. I don't know when, there's no date on this picture, but it's obviously 1988 or before. So, Linda Reuther has loved quilts since she was a child, when she was covered and comforted by quilts made by her grandmother, Anna Stocker Reuther. When she moved from Michigan to California in 1965, she took her grandmother's quilts with her, and soon she was scouting around for more quilts to collect. She displayed one of her finds on her living room wall, a brilliant blazing star. The first time Julie Silber walked into Linda's house and saw that quilt, she knew she wanted to learn more about quilts. Now, here's the interesting thing. Well, let me finish this paragraph and then I'll tell you more. Julie was already interested in the history of everyday people and particularly of women's lives, and she soon began to see that quilts, as historical documents, provided some of the richest tools for uncovering and understanding the lives of ordinary women of the past. So I think that's important here to know. I don't think that Julie walked into Linda's house and went, oh my gosh, quilts, because Julie's parents were collectors. Julie's mother specifically collected blue and white quilts. So Julie was surrounded by quilts, I would imagine, her whole life. I cannot remember what her father did, but it was something I want to say it was something in the humanities, the arts or antiquities and humanities. And he was a collector. And so I feel like, I don't want to say that Bonnie's trying to be misleading here, but I think she's being a little bit like, I don't know, kind of making the story sound the way she wants it to, because it seems to me that, if Julie and Linda were childhood friends, and Linda has developed, she always had her grandmother's quilts, and she's kind of developed this, like, I want to collect more quilts. She and Julie partnering up and deciding that, they want to explore this more. It seems to me it's kind of like it's coming from a lifelong interest or a lifelong knowledge. It's not like suddenly I just got smacked in the face with a quilt. These ladies have very deep roots in quilts. And I mean, I'm saying that as a good thing. And I'm kind of mad at Bonnie for not like making that point more, especially with Julie's parents, because I think they're fascinating too. Julie, I'm trying to remember where it was, but it's sometime in the last decade or two that Julie mounted an exhibit of her mother's quilts. So they were all blue and white quilts, and I saw some pictures. It was very pretty. Wherever it was that the show is mounted, I don't know if it was a museum or some other type of institution, but it was in a space that was very beautiful. And the quilts kind of were, underneath these colonnades. So, she has kind of this richness in her past with quilts. So moving along. Julie and Linda pursued their interest in learning about and collecting quilts, and in 1972 opened a gallery specializing in 19th century quilts. One of the pieces they had purchased was an elegant mariner's compass signed and dated Mary R. Strickler, 1834. So they named their gallery Mary Strickler's Quilt and kept this quilt hanging as the centerpiece for the next 10 years. Over that 10-year period, they continued to study 19th century women and their quilts, and they curated several museum exhibitions. In the process, they uncovered a wealth of family history, photos, diaries, and other documentation relating to quilts. So, I mean, Linda and Julie were like, I think the quilt history community owes a lot to these ladies. I sometimes feel like, Barbara Brackman gets a lot of, bear with me, let me find, where does this continue? 54. Barbara Brackman, rightly so, gets a lot of press about quilts and her, her history in publishing books and, doing lots and lots of deep research. But, there's also people like Julie Silber and Linda Ruther here that definitely were making strides on the scene. In 1981, as the culmination of the decade of their work, they were involved with Pat Ferrero in making the film, so it was both Julie and Linda, in making the film Quilts in Women's Lives. And they presented the exhibition American Quilts, A Handmade Legacy at the Oakland Museum. So Hearts and Hands is the book that was part of that film and exhibition. That show attracted more than 100,000 visitors, setting records for attendance at that museum and for quilt shows anywhere, and remains today as a landmark exhibit in presenting meaningful and profound truths about 19th century women as revealed by the artifacts of their daily lives. That's huge. That is really huge. After that show, Julie and Linda decided to close their gallery so they could concentrate on research and collecting. Julie has been teaching and lecturing about quilts, curates the Esprit collection of Amish quilts, and has co-produced with Pat Ferrero the 1987 film. Okay, wait a minute. Pat Ferrero had 2 films. I'm sorry. I have misspoken. I have badly misspoken. Okay, so the first film was Quilts in Women's Lives. That was in the early 80s. 87, that's just Julie. She co-produced with Pat Ferrero the 1987 film Hearts and Hands. So that's specifically about 19th century women in quilts. So, along with co-authoring the book of the same name for Quilt Digest Press. Linda has been continuing her study and research of quilts. So if you have not seen Hearts and Hands, it is on YouTube. I don't think I can show it without getting a copyright strike. But maybe soon I will do so. And just take the copyright strike, because it's good stuff, and it is out there for you to look at. And the book, I have the book. Let me see. I think it's back on my, I just looked at it the other day. I think it's back on my big bookshelf. It's not here. But also a very good book. And it's one of those books that, like, I've read parts of it. I haven't read it from cover to cover, and I need to. It's one of those ones where, I flipped through it a bunch of times. I've looked at the pictures, but it's one of those books that needs to be read. When asked why they decided to let go of part of the Mary Strickler's quilt collection, Linda answered, "We had no place to show the quilts anymore, and it seemed wrong to keep them in storage where no one could see them." As well, they agreed, the timing seemed right. Linda spoke for both herself and her friend Julie when she wrote for Sotheby's catalog. "Quilts have enriched my life with their visual beauty, their rich and varied calicos, their thousands of hours of hand stitches, their stories. Just as I said goodbye to Mary Strickler's quilt gallery in 1982, it is now time for me to say goodbye to the quilts in the collection. I will hold in my heart and memory these deeply personal and powerful documents in cloth." Documents. I've always said this. And, I guess, like, I know I didn't coin the phrase quilts or documents, but it's something that, like, it just popped into my head one day. And I feel like it's having read a lot of things like Linda's quote that had just kept hitting at me, that quilts are documents. And indeed they are. There is so much in quilts that tell us about women in their lives, and particularly in times when women were, just truly invisible, essentially. So she finishes up by saying, "They have been an important piece of my life's quilt, and I only hope they will enrich the lives of their new owners as they did mine." So I think that is beautiful. I'm sad that I never knew her. And honestly, I had met Julie, a number of years ago, and, again, did not realize until later on when somebody said, "Oh, Mary Strickler, that's Julie and her business partner, Linda." And I was like, "Oh, okay." so much to learn. I didn't know. So there's a little piece, there's a little piece of the, what, has been kind of a question mark for me. And I didn't have to pester Julie to find out. So, moving right along is another 1988 magazine. This is June of 88, Quilter's Newsletter magazine. And this is beautiful quilt on the front. And you know what? I bet do you think it might be a Doreen Speckman? Let's find out. No, I'm wrong. It's not Doreen. I was thinking that looks a lot like those Doreen Speckman quilts we look like. But no, this is called Peace on Earth, 94 by 94. 1987, made by Mary Golden of Northampton, New Hampshire, and Gloucester, New Massachusetts. The blocks include several kaleidoscope variation that Mary teaches in her quilt classes. So, really beautiful quilt. And by the way, this magazine is from my mother's collection. I tried to peel her address label. I don't know what they used back in the 80s to stick labels on stuff. It's like the strongest glue I have ever endured in my life. It like immediately wanted to like just rip the page. So I had to scribble it out. You don't need to know where my mother lives. Okay. So what we're reading out of this issue, and I had to do a little bit of research to like figure out exactly what this is. So the story that we're going to read is called A Piece of Red Calico. And it says, "From famous comic recitations, a pamphlet published in 1893. And then up here in the left-hand corner, it says the People's Handbook series. So I was like, was this a series that Quilter's Newsletter magazine did? Like, what is this? Well, no, it is not. Let me tell you. I did the little bit of research. So, so first of all, this, let's see, where is it? The People's Handbook series was published by F.M. Lupton, or Lupton, Lupton. These were, they are cheap bi-monthly paper booklets similar to dime novels. And, you know, they're made out of that pulpy paper. So thinking of like Godey's Lady's book, like they're, you know, they deteriorate very easily. And they were written on all kinds of stuff, like household stuff. I noticed that there were some, so issue number 17 was The Practical Poultry Keeper. Issue number 21 was The Mystic Oracle, or The Complete Fortune Teller and Dream Book. Number 29, How to Secure a Business Education at Home. If you are a person of a certain age, and I'm going to include myself in this because this is a memory of mine. Do you guys remember at the checkouts at the grocery store, and also like I think probably Walmart and Target and stuff of the time, I'm thinking I stopped seeing these maybe in the early 2000s. But they were these little books, and they were usually there like the Poor Richard's Almanac, like the Farmer's Almanac would be there, and then of course all your tabloids, People Magazine, all that stuff. We still see those. But they were these little books, and you know, sometimes there were things like crossword puzzles and stuff like that, but sometimes they were things like this, like Nostradamus's most, you know, important predictions, you know, stuff like that. Do you guys remember these? And that's what these remind me of. That's kind of what I feel like these were. You know, they eventually became these little, you know, junky little books at the supermarket checkout. They always had like horoscope ones. I feel like when I was a kid, like I'm probably a teenager, I may have bought some of the horoscope ones just because I was like, I was, you know, into that. So moving forward to this specific one, Quilter's Newsletter Magazine does not actually have all of the information. This particular one is a famous humorous short story written by the prominent 19th century American author Frank Stockton. I don't think they mention Frank Stockton at all in this piece. So he is the actual original writer. And then F.M. Lupton had a particular issue of the People's Handbook series that was famous comic recitations. So that's how this all comes together. And I did ask AI about this. I did it through Google Lens because that's how I had to start piecing this together. So I did ask some AI questions. And apparently, like, again, this is the time period where there's all kinds of these sort of how-to DIY kind of, you know, this is the period of like Weldon's needlework books. This is a period of, I mean, obviously Godey's Lady's book was still in publication. So you have a lot of stuff kind of telling people how to live. You know, here's what the fashions are. Here's what the needlework you're supposed to do looks like. Here are the patterns. You know, here are the instructions. Here's, you know, how to run your home. What's good etiquette. Like all of this kind of stuff. People are being bombarded with information. So they do mention in all the details here, there's some eBay connections here with things that are available, but the Dime Novel Bibliography is a place where you can find at least the titles. I don't know that you can necessarily link directly to them. They're kind of scattered all over. The Internet Archive supposedly has some. Because this is the only one that really stuck out that was about fabric and quilting, I didn't go down the rabbit hole. But so that's what this is. Let us get started. You know it's going to be a riot. Also, this illustration of this lady and man, this is not, that is not an old illustration. This was a more recent art by Teresa Eisinger. So, to give her credit. Okay. It begins. I was going into town the other morning when my wife handed me a little piece of red calico and asked me if I would have time during the day to buy her 2.5 yards of calico like that. I assured her that it would be no trouble at all, and putting the piece of calico in my pocket, I took the train for the city. At lunchtime, I stopped in at a large dry goods store to attend to my wife's commission. I saw a well-dressed man walking the floor between the counters. These people are called floor walkers, by the way. If you've ever watched Suffrages. What was the name of that? It was with Jeremy Piven. Selfridges. That's what Selfriges. Selfridges. Anyway, this is where I get most of my knowledge from about Victorian and early 1900s department stores. Okay. So, well-dressed man walking the floor between the counters, where long lines of girls were waiting on much longer lines of customers, and asked him where I could see some red calico. This way, sir, and he led me up the store. Miss Stone, said he to a young lady, show this gentleman some red calico. What shade do you want? Asked Miss Stone. I showed her the little piece of calico that my wife had given me. She looked at it and handed it back to me. Then she took down a great roll of red calico and spread it out on the counter. Why, that isn't the shade, said I. No, not exactly, said she, but it is prettier than your sample. That may be, said I, but you see, I want to match this piece. There is something already made of this kind of calico which needs to be made larger or mended or something. I want some calico of the same shade. The girl made no answer, but took down another roll. That's the shade, she said. Yes, I replied, but it's striped. Stripes are more worn than anything else in calicos, said she. Yes, but this isn't to be worn. It's for furniture, I think. He doesn't even know what it's for. Is it for a dress? Is it for a couch? Is it for a quilt? He doesn't know. Yes, this isn't to be worn. It's for furniture, I think. At any rate, I want perfectly plain stuff to match something already in use. Well, I don't think you will find it perfectly plain unless you get turkey red. What is turkey red? I asked. Turkey red is perfectly plain in calicos, she answered. Well, let me see some. We haven't any turkey red calico left, she said, but we have some very nice plain calicos in other colors. I don't want any other color. I want stuff to match this. It's hard to match cheap calico like that, she said, and so I left her. I next went into a store a few doors further up Broadway. We can imagine, I guess this is in New York. When I entered, I approached the floor walker. Handing him my sample, I said, Have you any calico like this? Yes, sir, said he. Third counter on the right. I went to the third counter to the right and showed my sample to the salesman in attendance there. He looked at it on both sides. Then he said, We haven't any of this. The gentleman said you had, said I. We had it, but we're out of it now. You'll get that goods at an upholsterer's. I went across the street to an upholsterer's. Have you any stuff like this? I asked. No, said the salesman, we haven't. Is it for furniture? Yes, I replied. Then turkey red is what you want. Is turkey red just like this? I asked. No, said he, but it's much better. That makes no difference to me, I replied. I want something just like this. But they don't use that for furniture, he said. I see this is getting quite messy. I should think people could use anything they want for furniture, I remarked, somewhat sharply. They can, but they don't, he said quite calmly. They don't use red like that. They use turkey red. I said no more, but left. The next place I visited was a very large dry goods store. Of the first salesman I saw, I inquired if they kept red calico like my sample. You'll find it on the second story, he said. I went upstairs. There I asked a man, Where will I find red calico? In the far room to the left, right over there, and he pointed to a distant corner. I walked through the crowd of purchasers and salespeople and around the counters and tables filled with goods to the far room to the left. When I got there, I asked for red calico. The second counter down this side, said the man. I went there and produced my sample. Calico's downstairs, said the man. Have you ever had a situation like this? I have. They told me they were up here, I said. Not these plain goods. You'll find them downstairs at the back of the store, over on that side. I went downstairs to the back of the store. Where will I find red calico like this? I asked. Next counter but one, said the man addressed, walking with me in this direction pointed out. Dunn, that's the name, D-U-N-N. Dunn, show red calicos. Mr. Dunn took my sample and looked at it. We haven't this shade and that quality of goods, he said. We'll have you it in any quality of goods, I asked. Yes, we've got it finer. And he took down a piece of calico and unrolled a yard or two of it on the counter. That's not the shade, I said. No, he said. The goods is finer and the color's better. I want to match this, I said. I thought you weren't particular about the match, said the salesman. You didn't care for the quality of the goods, and you know you can't match goods without taking into consideration quality and color both. If you want that quality of goods in red, you ought to get turkey red. I did not think it necessary to answer this remark, but said, then you've got nothing to match this. No, sir, but perhaps they may have it in the upholstery department on the 6th story. The 6th? So I got in the elevator and went up to the top of the house. Have you any red stuff like this? I said to the young man. Red stuff? Upholstery department, other end of this floor. I went to the other end of the floor. I want some red calico, I said to the man. Furniture goods, he asked. Yes, said I. 4th counter to the left. I went to the 4th counter to the left and showed my sample to a salesman. He looked at it and said, you'll get this down on the 1st floor. Calico department. This poor man. I turned on my heel, descended the elevator, and went out to Broadway. I was thoroughly sick of red calicos, but I determined to make one more try. My wife had bought her red calico not long before, and there must be some to be had somewhere. I ought to have asked her where she bought it, but I thought a simple little thing like that could be bought anywhere. I went into another large dry goods store. As I entered the door, a sudden tremor seized me. I could not bear to take out that piece of red calico. If I had any other kind of a rag about me, a pen wiper or anything of that sort, I think I would have asked them if they could match that. Marianne, your husband would have given up. My husband would have given up after the 1st store. If he had to walk upstairs to a 2nd counter, he would have been like, go get it yourself. Of course, I'm also like that when it comes to finding things in Home Depot. If it's not in a logical place, I'm done. But I stepped up to a young woman and presented my sample with the usual question. Back room, counter on the left, she said. I went there. Have you any red calico like this? I asked of the lady behind the counter. No, sir, she said, but we have it in turkey red. Turkey red again, I surrendered. All right, I said, give me turkey red. How much, sir? She asked. I don't know, say 5 yards. The lady looked at me rather strangely, but measured off 5 yards of turkey red calico. Then she rapped on the counter and called out, cash. A little girl with yellow hair and 2 long braids came slowly up. The lady wrote the number of yards, the name of the goods, her own number, the price, the amount of the banknote I handed her, and some other matters, probably the color of my eyes and the direction and velocity of the wind, on a slip of paper. She then copied all this in a little book that she kept by her. Then she handed the slip of paper, the money, and the turkey red to the yellow-haired girl. This young girl copied the slip in a little book she carried. They made like a triplicate here. And then she went away with the calico, the paper slip, and the money. After a long time, during which the girl probably took the goods, the money, and the slip to some central desk where the note was received, its amount and number entered in a book, change given to the girl, a copy of the slip made and entered, the girl's entry examined and approved, goods wrapped up, girl registered, plates counted, meaning her hair, and entered on a slip of paper and copied by the girl in her book. Girl taken to a hydrant and washed. Number of towels entered on a paper slip and copied by the girl in her book. Value of my note, an amount of change branded somewhere on the child. This is actually pretty funny. And said, process noted on a slip of paper and copied in her book. The girl came to me, bringing my change and the package of turkey red calico. I had time for but very little work at the office that afternoon. And when I reached home, I handed the package of calico to my wife. She unrolled it and exclaimed, "Why, this doesn't match the piece I gave you." "Match it!" I cried. "Oh no, it doesn't match it. You didn't want that matched. You were mistaken. What you wanted was turkey red, third counter on the left. I mean, turkey red is what they use." My wife looked at me in amazement, and then I detailed to her my troubles. "Well," she said, "this turkey red is a great deal prettier than what I had, and you've got so much of it that I needn't use the other at all. I wish I thought of turkey red before." "I wish from my heart you had," I said. Oh my gosh, that was cute. That was really cute. I liked that. You could just sense this poor man. I mean, and how many times have you, like, I don't know, I think I see this kind of thing in, you know, like where they're making fun of like the Motor Vehicle Administration or something. And it's like, you go to one counter and they're like, no, I can't help you here. You got to go to that counter. And then it's like, I got to go over there and take another number and wait again. And you get there and they're like, "Oh no, you needed to have this stamped at that first counter." And you're like, "Oh my God, I'm going to kill somebody. This is," that's what this felt like to me. And you know, it's so funny. This particular story, you know, as silly as it is, I mean, it just kind of gives you, like, I've been through that situation before, like trying to find something and being like a wild goose chase to find it, and not really getting very much help from people that are, you know, service people. So, you know, but this is like over 100 years ago, right? This was, 1893. So, how much we share with this man, you know, and his odyssey to find this fabric. That was pretty cute. I like that. I love those kind of things, you know, when you find them, and they're just amusing. And like, again, there was a time when I thought of people from the 1800s as being so very distant, you know, like you might as well have been riding dinosaurs, right? But they don't feel so distant after you read something like that. They feel very, very, very close, because like our problems haven't changed, I think. You know, I could see where things could be very different between, you know, today and somebody that, you know, pre-industrial revolution, you know, things were so very different. But once you add in the Industrial Revolution and you've got commerce and capitalism, and we could absolutely feel their pain. So I thought that was pretty interesting. All right. You guys, I am actually not feeling Avril Colby today. I didn't get a chance to reach out to the Quilters Guild about her quilt, and I want to do that. I love the fact that, so the first piece of the appendix is about creating templates. Possibly the other reason is that I've got a really strong sounding thunderstorm brewing. It's very close, so that might be good if I go soon. But she's listed the basic tools for cutting templates. Now, to me, if I said to you, like, you know, the tools you need to make some templates, and you're thinking, oh, well, okay, I guess like that clear plastic, you know, the plastic template material, or maybe just like, you know, cardboard, you know, what kind of things do you need? Like a pencil or a pen, some scissors, right? The basic tools that she's listing here. Now, this is prefaced by some explanation, but I just want to give you the list. The basic tools which are needed for cutting all templates are a pair of compasses and a protractor. Okay, that's if you're drafting your own, so yes. Inch rule, preferably of metal, but otherwise wooden with a metal edge. Okay. A cutting board. Okay. A lino cutting knife or a wood chisel and hammer. Strong scissors. And a consistently sharpened pencil. To add to these tools, a hacksaw or metal shears may be added when they are necessary. So she's talking about making, making stuff out of, like, I guess it's a precursor to plexiglass. It's perspex. It's like a clear stuff. And then, so I think that's what the lino cutting knife or wood chisel and hammer are for. The hacksaw. She's also talking about zinc and aluminum. So these metal templates. So, yeah, I think this will be a good, this will be a good read on Monday to get into some of these. And she has some interesting thoughts on geometry and such. So, yes, people did make metal templates. Yep. My mom had some. Now, metal templates that I often will see at antique stores, a lot of times in my area specifically, and then like up in Pennsylvania, they're not actually quilting templates. They are templates for that. It's kind of in the Pennsylvania Dutch communities, Amish Mennonite communities, where, and I'm totally blanking on what the craft is called, but it's like it looks like a flower template with like kind of thin petals, and you put it down and you stitch over it and then you cut, and it makes this like flower design that's like all floofy. Sometimes those I think are mistaken for quilting templates, but absolutely they did make quilting templates out of metal, tin, anything that you could cut with tin snips. Definitely. I've seen a lot of stuff, about people that live on farms would have access to this kind of stuff because you needed to use tin to repair stuff. So, sounds like Druid is also maybe having some of the weather. Druid, I will talk you off of a mountain anytime, girl. Now, as far as the lino cuts, Tish, I actually do have something that it's not necessarily linoleum, but the fact that people would use anything they had handy. I do have something. I will show you on Monday. So you have to tune in or watch the recording. But yeah, people made templates out of a lot of stuff. Anything that was like firm and would hold an edge, for sure. And if you were tracing it a lot, you didn't want cardboard, because cardboard eventually, like, just the tracing around it starts to dent it, and then your pieces are not the same. They're not square. So, all right, you guys have a fantastic weekend, and I'm hoping that the sky is opening. I hope you guys don't have terrible storms like I do. But oh no. Thanks, Tish. So you've sent it to me. So yes, Saturday, Stitch and Glitch, 2 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Quilt Nerding. Hang out with me and Jill. Jill's got some stuff to show off, and I am actually working on a new stitching project that, like, I have no business starting a new project, but I think I kind of mentioned it on Quilt Nerding, I think, last week. So I will show you my progress on Saturday. So you guys have a wonderful afternoon and a wonderful weekend. And if I don't see you on Saturday, I'll see you Monday. Bye. Bye. Bye, guys.